Hey guys, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode, and welcome to the first episode of Unleash Your Inner Greatness. Today's guest is a really special feature to kick off the series, my friend and meditation teacher, Tom Cronin. For those of you who don't know Tom Cronin, he's a former stockbroker turned leading Vedic meditation teacher, an international keynote speaker, a 4 times author, a film producer and director, and a humble family man. Welcome. Welcome to the show, mate.
Good to be here, man. It was such a long list of accolades. We got a couple in there that probably weren't appropriate. So I'm not a film director, but definitely a film producer. So I appreciate that. That's all good.
And it's a big part of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, great. Okay, awesome.
But, I want to acknowledge you and thank you so much for having us
Pleasure.
Here.
It's great to be here.
So I appreciate that.
All good, man.
So you've been an incredible influence in my journey to inner happiness. And I think what I want to first do is just ask you really sort of bring this back to a really positive note and just ask you what you're grateful for right now in your life and what's been the highlight of your year so far.
Wow, good questions. Gratitude's a big thing for me. I tend to want to do a gratitude session every day. And you know, it can be really small things that I'm grateful for to substantial things. But I think for me, a big thing that I'm really grateful for is my family. I just think it's such an important part of my life, you know, that family unit. And my close family, you know, my children, my wife, are just such a precious part of my world. And there's so much great gratitude for them in my life. And then just small things, not that they're really small, the mere fact alone that for me trees are such a big part of you know, my passion. I love trees and I go around planting trees, and the fact that they feed me every day with oxygen, you know, it's just such a phenomenal thing, and they suck out the carbon dioxide from the air and keep it clean for us. And I just love this relationship we have with trees, and for me it's one of those quirky parts of my characteristic that I love trees and love going around supporting trees. And you know, small things like running water coming out of my tap every day, you know, it's just such a gift to have a hot shower every day. And you know, there's people in the world that don't have that. So there's so many things to be grateful for, and I never get tired of writing a list of things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah. It's interesting, gratitude I've found is immensely powerful. And one thing that I spoke about recently about gratitude is that whole thing about, you know, we have so many luxuries in the Western world. And one example I gave was, I was in, I don't know if you've heard of the Masai Mara tribe.
Yeah.
So they actually live in huts that are made out of cow dung. And they have a furnace in the middle of the hut which sustains them in terms of cooking food. But they live off the land. So here I am giving the analogy that I rock up at home, I press a remote control, the garage goes up automatically, I go in, I turn the kettle on, it fires up, I go to the stove, it fires up automatically. But you know, then I contrast that to their life, and they're on the land looking for their food, they have to walk kilometres for water, and I just gained massive gratitude from that. So yeah, it's really powerful.
Nice. Yeah, it's a
How
beautiful
else
thing.
has gratitude been influential in your life?
I think the fact of the mere fact alone of putting your attention on something that you perceive to be a gift in your life. This is what gratitude is. It's acknowledging something of substance in your life, whether it's fresh running water, a tree, or a family member. What it does is that it immediately conveys an energy of abundance. You're actually saying to the universe, I'm abundant. I have great things already in my life. And what that does, it tends to create a cascade of more abundance coming back to you. And I see gratitude as a really powerful tool, not only to just have acknowledgement of the gifts that you have in your world, but to actually inspire more receiving to actually occur in your world as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool, man.
So with the trees, I'm going to go back to the trees for a sec, because you did tell me a cool story that we spoke about before the interview kicked off. I'd love to hear a little bit about, before we get to your story, just a little bit about the philanthropic things that you've done as part of your journey, because, you know, we're talking about planting the trees around Bondi, and that's something that I learnt through your audio program, the Empowerment series. And but I'm just keen to know, from a giving back point of view, what have you been most proud of, and, you know, moving forward as part of this, you got so much going on. What's your vision for philanthropic
Yeah, look, I mean,
going forward?
For many years of my life, I was just a net taker. You know, I was just a very parasitic person that just wanted more. And that was motivated by being in a really deep space of lack, of emptiness, and wanting to extract as much experience, as much, acquisition as possible to fill big holes that I was experiencing in myself. And that's what motivates this very parasitic, narcissistic nature. And I suffered with that for a long time. And there's probably still traces of that in my current existence as well. It's hard to get rid of some of these tendencies. But what happened when I started to meditate was I started to fill those holes in and started to find a sense of abundance within. I started to tap into a reservoir of full fulfillment and fullness. And from that, what I found was that I had access to give. So before, I was a net taker, and I was looking to extract as much out of experience as possible. And then what happened was I started to find within myself an abundance, an overflow. And from there, it's like, wow, what can I do with that? So the first, there was just a little bit of an overflow. And so I wanted to start planting trees around Bondi, and I made a community, or not made, but I inspired a community of people that wanted to help me plant trees and maintain these trees that we were planting around Bondi. And now they're massive trees that I love seeing around the place. But then I had more to give than just that. So I started working in a soup kitchen on Saturdays while I was a broker. And I'd spend my entire Saturday for 12 months, going to the Wayside Chapel in King's Cross, where there was a lot of homeless people. And I basically worked there and sat down with them and chatted with them and served them lunch and breakfast and stuff. But from then I had more to give, and then I wanted to start giving back in a bigger way. And that's when I left finance and wanted to create the Stillness Project and start teaching meditation and coaching and running retreats. And some of that's not philanthropic, some of that's simply just a business that is, business of passion and purpose. But there are philanthropic moments in that where I want to continue to give back to the community, and we offer scholarships, we offer programs, and we put on free events a lot of the time to enable the community to access what we're doing without having to pay for it.
Yeah. And I remember, so for anyone who doesn't know what the Stillness Project is, I'll get you to explain it. But I remember, so I have attended your retreats, and I've done your meditation program as well, where you taught me to use a mantra. So I'd love to speak a bit more about that. So what is the Stillness Project?
Sure. The Stillness Project is a vision I had to inspire 1 billion people to meditate daily. And for me, when I had a major breakdown, suffered from anxiety and depression, and was very sick in that space, mentally sick, emotionally sick, I found meditation, and it was phenomenal, the shift that I went through after discovering that. And everything started to change through that process of meditation. It was like a hardware upgrade and a software upgrade. And I just found that was the most powerful tool that one could use for transformation. I really was impressed with how much it changed my life. And so I was really motivated to bring that to the world. And so the Stillness Project was about making that accessible for the masses and bringing meditation into a place where it was accessed by the mainstream. And, we've had people on remote islands north of Finland, and we've had people in housing estates in Sheffield, England, and Venezuela and Mexico that have sent us remarkable testimonials. That were suffering postnatal depression, and now they're playing with their kids happily, or they couldn't leave the house because they had agoraphobia. Now they're able to live a normal life. And it's just phenomenal how the boundaries of the world just dropped away with technology.
Yeah, because it's an online portal.
Yeah.
And I guess the catalyst for you to getting into meditation. So if I now jump into your story, and what I'd love as well is if you could take us back to maybe, the early teen days, and just sort of explain, how was life at home growing up? I know that, you know, your parents fostered you in a good Catholic upbringing. So, you know, I'm just keen for you to tell the audience what was life as, you know, what's your life been like as Tom Cronin
Sure.
from the early days to, you know, when you did go through that anxiety and depression and that. So paint us a picture of
All
the
right,
life of you.
gosh. Well, I was a gawky, very shy, nervous teenager. I went to an all-boys Catholic school and very agricultural rugby schools. They were big, beefy guys, and I definitely felt like a fish out of water. Very much it was a square peg in a round hole. And then I went into finance by default. I was supposed to go to you know, university and study journalism, but I applied for a bunch of jobs and landed this one in finance. And before long, I was swept into the world of money and, you know, fast cars, and it was very exciting, a lot of adrenaline. And, you know, I didn't ever intend to go down that path, but once you get into that industry, it's hard to leave it because there's so much money and it's so exciting. Yep. There's so much grandeur and lavishness in it. And I kind of got swept along by that, and by default was just ended up taking a career as a broker, which I never intended. And in the end, what happened was I was very easily influenced. I have quite an addictive nature. And so I got very involved in the whole rave culture and the drug culture, and that was really exciting, but also had a big price to pay for that. Funnily enough, when I found meditation, I became very addicted to that, but it was just a really healthy addiction.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I guess, helped me move through that in a really big way and change the addiction from one that had major karmic consequences to one that actually had very positive consequences.
Yeah. So we share similarity because we're both stockbrokers. So we know what it's like. It's very greed-driven. It's very fast and it's very furious. So recently, what I've noticed is I've stepped away from the corporate world, and I've just been taking a step back. So I've literally just been walking through the streets of Melbourne and the streets of Sydney. And literally, Tom, I see so much stress. And I don't know if it's, I can feel the anxiety out in the pathways. But where do you think the culture's going? Do you think progressively we're getting more aware of managing stress and becoming more conscious as a society? Or do you think, where do you think the shift is right now where we are?
I think we're at a very precarious point in our evolution as a species. I think we're going to pay a big price for the life we've created. We've gone down a path that we can't turn back from, and the path that I don't see us taking down a very healthy way. I don't think we're going to have a very good result from where we're going, and what's going to happen as a result of that. It's actually hard for me to articulate. As you might notice, my words aren't coming out fluidly, but it does concern me.
Yeah.
There's an overwhelming sense of fear and anxiety. Our nervous systems aren't made for the level of stimulation that we're putting through. They're not made for the environment of Wi-Fi and 3G, 4G, coming up 5G soon. So the price to pay for this will be a deterioration of our fulfillment, a deterioration of our health and happiness. It's phenomenal. You know, just the other day, there was a report on Four Corners, a TV show here in Australia, where we're voted the #1 most obese country in the world per capita. And it's phenomenal that we have this data, these stats, when we have literally seemingly one of the healthiest lifestyles. You know, I just think we're way off track from where we can be, and we're paying a big price for it.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because I think one of the solutions that people go to straight away is to medicate. You know, it's almost like there's something out of balance, and the first thing that we think of is, I'm going to go to the doc and I'm going to pop a pill and my life's going to be, you know, fixed and I'm going to be happy. But when you went through the tough time, when, you know, you had a burnout and you went through the depression, if there's someone listening on the other side of the fence here, and if they were going through a tough time, how would they come to know and accept and learn more about meditation. And I guess going back to your journey, right? How did you come to know of it? How did you learn about it?
Yeah,
How did it come into your world?
it's a great question. I mean, it's a very different world that we live in today than what we lived in 1996 when I was starting out in meditation. In 1996, there was no Google, there was no YouTube. Yeah. And so back then you had a Yellow Pages, which is a phone book that you looked up things in, and if you wanted a mechanic, you looked up M for mechanic, and if you wanted meditation, you looked up M for meditation. And so I went to M for meditation and found meditation centers in my local vicinity. You literally could not find a business outside your locality back in 1996, which was not that long ago, Yeah. It wasn't like you could search the internet. You really just had to go into your local Yellow Pages to find your local business. So it was very different back then. These days, obviously, you could just go onto YouTube. Yeah. And I can find millions of meditations, and they're going to be great. You can use free apps on your phone. There's so many ways that we can learn meditation these days. Look, there's so many different degrees to meditation. You can get on YouTube and there's some great meditations that you can do, and they're going to have a great effect. And I highly recommend for someone that's strapped for cash that's a good starting point, definitely. Then you can go all the way to the ultimate, which is sitting with a teacher that's highly qualified and spending a number of sessions with that teacher and going through the process of learning in person with a qualified teacher that has been, I'm going to use the word initiated, but it sounds a bit ritualistic and esoteric, but initiated into being a qualified teacher.
Yep, to teach it properly.
You teach it properly, yep.
Yep. So with, when you come across it, and I'll speak for my journey as well. So for anyone who doesn't know how we met, when I lost my marriage in 2013, I was stuck and I needed some help. I was going through immense sadness, and I actually met Jeremy Britton at an event where Arnold Schwarzenegger presented. So I started following him. I noticed he was meditating, drinking all these green smoothies, and I was just following him. I was just thinking, he went through a similar path. He'd gone through a marriage breakup, and we were sharing a common ground. He was in finance as well. But then somehow you come into my world, and I just want to relate back to that point that you made of training with a proper teacher. It wasn't until I started really being around your circle of influence. Basically, I was just trying to get around you as much as I could, because once I started... He
sounds like a stalker, but he wasn't stalking. He just sounds a bit
like
creepy.
being around good people.
Yeah, sure.
So, and to that point, I have tried consciously to be around you, helping you at your events and
sure,
being
it's been
around
great.
good people. So, but the biggest catalyst for me was at that time, I was going through a tough time and I felt so lonely. But I saw one thing that completely changed my life. So I saw Jeremy was meditating at sunrise. And I thought, it looks so beautiful. It was majestic. So I thought, if that's beautiful and it's majestic and he seems to be happy because of the process, I'm going to give it a shot. So I started meditating at sunrise. And then my transformation just started from there. And then that's when you come into my space. So what I wanted to sort of open the discussion to is, I know I did hear about the 4 types of meditation: chanting, transcendental. There's 2 C's. You'll have to expand on that.
Yeah, concentration and contemplation.
And contemplation, yeah. So if someone is new to this world and they want to get into meditation, I know that you teach transcendental, but maybe if you could just share with the audience a little bit about the different styles and where you feel they would be adaptive to what situation.
Sure. Let's just have a look at the 4 different types of meditation. We've got concentration, which is concentrating on one single point, the breath or a candle or your third eye, and that's bringing the mind to a single point. We've got contemplation, which is contemplating an ideal or a vision or a gratitude, where we're having thoughts, but we're being proactive with those thoughts. We've got chanting, which is what I did last night with my daughter. Tuesday night. like Govinder's here, we go to a large group of people and we all chant over and over again, and it inspires an incredible state within your body, very powerful.
It's really
But it works best when you're in a big group, and so it's not something you can generally do. I mean, you can chant on your own, but much more powerful in a group.
Yeah.
And then we've got those deeper transcending style meditations using predominantly Bij mantras, which take the mind beyond the thinking process. The big question is what one's best, and I don't think there's anything that's better or worse. There's not really a best or worst meditation. It's what you feel compelled to use and what's working for you. I know the one I used and the one that was most effective for me and the one that I teach was the one using the mantras that allowed me to transcend. Why I think the transcending mantras and the transcending style meditations are so important is because it gives you access to a realm beyond the vehicle of mind and body. Concentration meditations, contemplation meditations are still in that world of you, the individual, and the other world, which is the world outside of you, particularly contemplation meditations. And I still do contemplation meditations, like just almost was doing one before, which was gratitude. But to transcend allows us to access being. This is the unboundedness of our own reality. This is us without the egoic entity. It's us without our thoughts. It's us without our feelings. And to really have access to that space, which does exist, it's a matter of how do we get there. And when we access it, when we experience it, we're ultimately experiencing our essential nature. This is you without all the other stuff, without the noise, without the disturbance. That's the emotional disturbance. And so transcending in meditation was a really big part of waking up and discovering fundamental truth.
Yeah. And one thing that I noticed when I started, the first time I started meditation was in India on my honeymoon. We did this 4-day meditation retreat where we were not speaking. Well, the task was not to speak for 4 days. I lasted 2. But I learnt more about myself in those 2 days than probably 30 years of my life. But the one thing that come up for me at the start of that journey was just the abundance of thoughts that were going. As soon as I sat in the stillness, my mind was just like this monkey demon that was bouncing off walls. So, and I'm sure you'd agree, right? It's probably a challenge probably one of the challenges for your students when they start a meditation practice, the thoughts, a lot of thoughts. So what's your, I suppose, tips and hints about how someone can better manage that process and create realistic expectations around that when they're starting the practice?
Yeah, it's really important we understand that the nature of the mind is to seek charm, and what the mind finds most charming is thinking. It absolutely loves to think. And so we nourish and nurture and fertilize that process by giving it lots of content to think about. When we get into meditation, the ability to be free of thoughts is very limited. We're particularly in the Western world where we're processing information all day long, having 50 to 70,000 thoughts. So to drop into thoughtlessness is going to be a very, very rare glimpse during meditation process. So we've got to get that straight first and foremost. Now, that said, students doing my weekend workshop where they have a mantra will dive into transcendence nearly 99% of the time in that first weekend workshop. So they will access a place of complete silence and stillness and go beyond the process of thinking. Definitely possible in a very early stage in the meditation process. I had one student just a few weeks ago, and she said when she came out of meditation, I think it was her second meditation, she was like, oh my goodness, where was I? I don't know what that was. I don't know where I was, but wherever it was, I want to go back there now. And what she'd done was that she'd transcended beyond the form world, thoughts, body, and emotions, and she'd experienced transcendence, and she'd never had that experience before, and that was in her second meditation. So it is possible depending on the technique, but if I asked you to just sit for your first meditation, second or third meditation, and just close your eyes and have no thoughts, that's just not going to be possible. Different meditations are definitely going to give you different experiences. But if we're conditioned to thinking 70,000 thoughts a day, to jump into a meditation, expect to have no thoughts is going to be very, very rare and difficult.
Yeah. When someone starts meditation, Tom, and there's this idealistic image that you're going to be this, Zen monk and you're going to be blissed out all the time, how do you get back to realism? And given that you've been practicing this for so long, can you give us a bit of an idea on, firstly, what it feels like? If you could explain maybe the deepest level of transcendence that you've got to, given your whole practice, maybe just let us know how that feels or what that looks like. And then, because what I'd love to do as part of sharing this message is to actually get some realism in the practice, so that people don't look at meditation and think, I'm going to be zen there all the time. Yeah. But to actually bring, some integrity to the profession and to your practice. And not saying that it's not, but just to be realistic with the listeners. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, firstly, there's two components to that question. One is, what is the experience of transcendence? The most profound states of transcendence is where you feel such universality. You feel so big and so vast. It's a phenomenal experience where there is a complete dissolving of the physical limitations, that I'm contained to this form called my body, and the limitations of the mind, which is there's something inside the skull that's thinking. In transcendence, there is no boundary, and you experience such vastness. It's like these hands just keep going out to the very rims of the universe, and that's me trying to explain how big my mind was. And it's just a simple state of consciousness without limit, and it's quite phenomenal. It's vast, it's spacious, it's powerful, and it's deeply blissful. So that's what one would experience in a profound transcendent experience, which is really, really nourishing and beautiful. Then what happens is, when you come out of meditation, you bring all that back in and you contract into your space. It's like the whole universe just goes, and you're back to being in this body, and I'm back into relativity. There's that camera over there, and there's Joseph here, and I've got dinner coming up soon. I've got a meeting to go to. So, you're back into time, you're back into space, you're back into matter, and you're back into duality. Yeah. And the process of enlightenment is like a lifetime journey of expanding and then contracting, expanding and contracting, and slowly over time, acknowledging that there's the contraction of your own individual self with a small s, but simultaneously acknowledging that you are the capital S self, which is the universality, which is you also, and that there is no duality. And you're moving in and out of that in varying degrees throughout the journey. And certainly it's important we acknowledge and recognize that the emotional fluctuations, which is the disturbance caused by some circumstance or event in that duality, so something else causes me to feel this way, then that still continues on. It still continues on. And I certainly still get sad. I was crying on the weekend. We had a sense of loss over something that happened. I'll just share with you, our puppy dog got passed away, and that was a very sad experience. There was a lot of sad emotional experiences to be had during that moment. You get angry with certain things that happen in life. You get frustrated, you get impatient. And this is part of still existing in the world of duality and the world of influence, where the world is influencing you, it's leaving impressions on you. And that is certainly the case for me. Now, there are some great sages, some incredibly enlightened masters that have, I would say, near equanimity through all of that, where they are so universal and so unoccupied by the ego that they're able to not have that disturbance. I mean, you might say Eckhart Tolle. I don't know him personally, but I certainly have noticed his persona is one that's very undisturbed. Now, a lot of people don't want that because it looks boring as batshit. So, that's why we're in this duality and why we're in this persona. I think there is that possibility to be unmoved, but it's certainly not the place that I'm in yet. Okay. And Eckhart, you should know, Tom. So you mentioned that you're not there yet in terms of the complete blissful state as the the ultimate Zen monk. I think what's more important for the end listener is the benefits of meditation, right? Like if we both think about that time where we were going through the depression, we both can relate to how tough it is. What are the benefits? You know, if someone starts adopting this practice, if someone is going through a tough time in their life right now, is going through anxiety or depression or panic attacks, can we paint a bit of a picture? Because you and I both know it, because we've started that process of getting into the bliss. But what are some of the benefits, and maybe a bit of science around as well, some research that you could share with the tribe?
Sure. Everyone's going to start their journey with meditation for many different reasons. Most people generally start because there's a pain point. It could be insomnia or anxiety, stress, depression, relationship problems. Looking for some solace, some reprieve from the disturbance, for that discomfort. The number one, I guess, benefit that comes from that starting point is getting the body out of the stress response state. And we can think of stress response as sympathetic nervous system. And the body's got these two systems. One's sympathetic, which is fight, flight, which is that protective mechanism to get you out of a dangerous situation, to get you out of a marauding tribe or a saber-tooth tiger situation. And in that moment, everything's changing. Physiologically, your body's changing. Mentally, your body's changing. You're starting to function from a very different part of your brain, very reptilian part of the brain. And this whole frontal lobe of the brain, that's that sort of cognitive, intelligent, wisdom sort of part of the brain, completely contracts. There's no time to be designing apps when we're running from a saber-tooth tiger. And so we get very limited brain functionality when we're stressed. Emotionally, or biochemically, I should say, we produce large amounts of cortisol and norepinephrine and adrenaline when we're in the stress state. But what we don't produce is melatonin and oxytocin and serotonin, these biochemicals for sleep, love, and happiness. It simply doesn't coexist, being in fight, flight, or sympathetic nervous system state and producing those healthy biochemicals that help us sleep, feel love, or feel happiness. That's because there's a very good reason. We don't need to feel that when we're running from a saber-tooth tiger marauding tribe. Yeah. So that stress response is what we've really got to work at eliminating from our lives as much as possible. It really doesn't serve us unless we're in a really severe life and death situation, and then that's appropriate. But to have that sustained regularly throughout the day, because we've got deadlines, we've got financial problems, we've got relationship problems, it just compounds more and more problems, and then we get in this vicious cycle. So the number one primary benefit from meditation is to get us out of sympathetic and into parasympathetic nervous system, where we can start to sleep better, feel better, better brain functioning, better creativity, more love and happiness in our lives. And then we generally start to attract better things in our lives. That could be the starting point, but then someone, once that pain point has been removed, then what's next? And that's where people want to start exploring more about consciousness and expansion of the mind, and wanting to access vaster fields of awareness. And then from there, what's the next step? From there, it's about, the eradication of the ego, and to experience a deep stillness within, where there's no longer those fluctuations of thoughts and feelings. So it really is how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? And it can be simply just you want to sleep better, or you want to get enlightened. And anything in between, really.
Yeah, and both are good, right?
Both are great.
Yeah, both are really good. And so once meditation does help you get out of that state of, I guess, some people feel stuck, some people are unhappy, some people are stressed. Meditation is a real catalyst for assisting in that process. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
What happens next in my journey was I started then looking for purpose. I started thinking about, it was meaningful, so how can I maybe start sharing more of this? Or how can I found meditation was really getting back to the truth of who I was as a person. So purpose come up for me a lot. So I started thinking about purpose in life a lot, and at your events, I kept asking you, even at 10:30 at night in Byron, last year, even though I know you're probably so tired, but I was like, Tom, how do you find your purpose in life? But, for you, what's your purpose as it stands now? And for everyone out there, what process should they go through to find their ultimate purpose?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really big thing in our world today to find your purpose. And we talked a lot about this actually, ironically, with my children this morning, 2 16-year-old children, and how there's so much pressure on people to have a life purpose and to have a job that has meaning and a job that has purpose. And we're talking about how literally up until, 1950s, 1960s, maybe 70s and 80s, people literally just got up and went to work. You think back thousands of years, they got up and they plowed the field, they put, shoes on the horses, they put, dug up potatoes, they weaved baskets, they made bread, they painted houses, they thatched roofs, they went down coal mines. Basically, they did a job that was going to enable them to put food on the table, a roof over their head.
Yeah.
And it was just, you just get up and you just do shit so that you can actually survive and you live. Yeah. And then in the last sort of 10 years, this whole life purpose and living a life of purpose and being in a job that's got purpose has become a really big thing. It's been all over Instagram memes, and I've talked a lot about it as well. And partly because we have the option to some degree to live a life, not so much a life with purpose, but to be in jobs that have purpose and meaning. We can do things like be writers and speakers and be musicians and artists and comedians, or 17-year-old YouTubers doing makeup, and have a massive following. And the world has opened up where we've got this possibility that we didn't used to have before, which is really exciting. But it's also created a lot of discontent, because now if we're in a job that is simply a well-paying job that supports us on a day-to-day basis, we get challenged by that, because we ask ourselves, is it enough?
Yeah.
And this whole idea is it enough, is really causing a lot of discontent. I think the number one priority is what is the point of life? What is the purpose of life? Yeah. And it isn't to have a great job. It isn't to make lots of money. It isn't to have children. It's not to make great interviews. It's actually to discover who we are. And a life of purpose is to be committed to that process. And what you do in the process of doing that, whether it's working in a bakery or working in a bank or working as an Uber driver, so be it. If you're doing what you're here to do, which is discover, to realize and to find joy in the process, is really what it's about. And to relish the small things in life, because it's just not possible to find careers that are full of purpose. It's just not possible for all of us. I really do believe that. It's a gift if we manage to land it, but it's such a rarity, and there's a lot of pressure on ourselves to have that when really very few people do. So if you're doing a menial job, if you're doing a job that's kind of a bit of a grind, but that's still a blessing, and there's a way for us to find gratitude in that, I think.
Yeah. And I love that you ended that with the word gratitude, because I've also adopted your mentality where I was working in a job that was paying me well. This was in the past, right? So I was earning good money, I was in a good paying job, but I was very unfulfilled. So this whole life purpose, but then through your teachings and general more consciousness around myself and who I am as a person, I remember in my last job, I literally made an effort to be grateful every single day for a couple of things about my job. Just front up, do the best I possibly could. And I felt that enabled my self-esteem to rise. I was doing a better job at work, but I was more fulfilled.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's polarity in all of this. I'm making feature films and doing retreats and writing books and coaching and teaching meditation, and it's exotic, it's exciting, it's beautiful, but there has its own challenges. Not every day is this amazing fist pump, oh my God, my life's just amazing. It has challenges, and it's confronting, it's a lot of hard work. And I was just saying to you before this, the things that I'm actually really love to do, I don't do a lot of. I spend a lot of my time in meetings, admin, legals, finances, and so I think there isn't ever going to be a dream circumstance out there that's 100% perfect.
Yeah. So mate, what's your gift? What's your gift to the world, if you thought about Tom Cronin, because I reckon everyone's got a gift. So what do you think yours is?
Oh, Joseph, it's hard, isn't it? Because that ego doesn't want to say these things. It gets all caught up in the story of it, doesn't it? Look, I tell you what I like to do. I like to teach. I like to pass on meditation because I'm passionate about it and it changed my life and I see it changing other people's lives. Yeah. I love coaching. I really find I have an affinity for where someone's at and what they might need. Sometimes the delivery might not be great, but I certainly enjoy that process of coaching, and I really enjoy running retreats.
Yeah. And if we go on to the bigger picture, which is the film, could you tell us, because it's such an exciting process, right?
Yeah.
Could you tell us about, because you've got a big vision, it's to inspire 1 billion people to meditate daily. So would it be okay for you to expand a little bit on the project and just let us know about the bigger vision and, you know, perhaps how as an audience we can help you make that come to life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, part of that vision, when you have such a bold statement, inspire 1 billion people to meditate daily, you've got to be careful with your taglines because you end up finding yourself creating things that are going to make that become a reality. And part of that was I started making this feature film, which has just grown and grown and grown into a substantially large project. And that feature film's called The Portal. And you can find out a little bit about that by going to theportalmovie.com. And, you know, by all means, just register your name. So we'll keep you up to date with the progress of that film and when we're coming out. But we're almost finished production. It's a very exciting film that looks at this some beautiful stories of transformation that have overcome immense challenges using meditation. And how that might affect the world as a whole if we start doing that collectively. Within that, we've got a great book that's coming out with it as well. We've got some really exciting publishing deals with USA, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand and Germany to start with plenty more coming on after that. And then there's also an app coming out with it as well. So it's a very big project that we hope will reach the masses and tell a really beautiful story and inspire people to get on that journey of bringing more stillness into their lives.
When can we expect it on the...
I'd say...
Is it coming to the big screen?
It will be on the big screen. It will be in cinemas. It'll also be online, and that will be coming out between March and June 2019. So we finish it in August 2018, but then we'll want to, you know, do a run through some festivals and things like that.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
So I want to start maybe wrapping and closing this amazing, thank you so much.
Pleasure,
really
mate.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
I really feel we spoke before this interview kicked off, and I was speaking to you about the realization that on the way here, there was this, not epiphany, but there was this message that come to me that said, this is more about just success. You know, I'm starting my journey as well. And it was the realization that this journey of me doing the meditation and I guess healing myself to some degree, it's more about self-worth and self-love. So a question that I've got is, if there's someone out there who's struggling with that and that needs to make peace with their past, what do they need to do to let go of maybe some of the underlying emotions around that? So, you know, the typical destructive ones are frustration, anger, guilt. What's a really great practice for them to do to help them move beyond that?
Well, meditation obviously is going to play a big part in that. And through meditation, we get the ability to observe and ask questions as to who is it or what is it that's feeling those frustrations, that anger, that sorrow, that sadness. With meditation and access to that independent observer, that quiet observer, we can then detect the disturbance exists only in the ego, which is a temporary status within us. The thing that the ego is caught up in doesn't exist. The story is no longer actually present. There is only presence. And so to be present is the dissolving of the story. Now, the ego doesn't want to do that. The ego loves the story and the drama, because that gives the ego nourishment. It's like giving a baby some sugar, and that's what the ego is. It's a baby that's addicted to the sugar of drama and story, but it's not you. So really the ultimate journey for anyone in that state is to explore who is it or what is it that is in the state of suffering. And it's really the ego, and beyond that lies being, which is the divine essence of who we are. It's not like God was up there going, oh my God, I just wish things would work out better for me. I wish things would hurry up. I wish I could get more money. Or it's just simple observance. And within us all lies such utmost peace, a deep serenity, a sweet peace. And the challenge with finding that is the noise and the distraction that the ego creates.
Yeah. I can be a testament. So what I'm going to go on to now is the retreat, just to round things up. But at the retreat, you go through that process. Mm-hmm. You go through you even go through a lot of emotion. You know, you could be doing a process which Tom takes you through called Vedic grounding, which is, I'll let you probably explain that better than me, but a lot of emotion comes up. And I think the beautiful thing about meditation is it actually gets you to your core self, as you said. So could you perhaps tell us a little bit about, I know you're doing a retreat soon in Bali. I was on your previous one in Byron, which was so powerful. And I like to recommend things that are transformational, and I think it works. So would it be okay to let us know a little bit about what the retreat is and how the viewers can join it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the retreat is a deep immersion into that stillness and into that silence. So we go through a Vedic practice called rounding, which is a 4-limb sequence using some yoga asanas, some alternate breathing through the nostrils, meditation, and then shavasana, lying down. And we'll do multiple rounds, as well as some workshops and talks, and there's beautiful food and massage and things. But ultimately, what we're there to do is to eradicate, to release, to expel that which we're not. Because that which we are is already there. That eternal bliss, the eternal light, the eternal love is always there, never goes away. But we've accumulated and built up layers and layers of illusion, this perceived reality, which is just what we called in our retreats a scaffolding. We build a scaffolding around us, and we dismantle that. That's really what the retreat's about, is dismantling the illusion of what you think you are, to discover what you always were and will be. So that's really the retreat. They can go to that at tomcronin.com or stillnessproject.com website, and they'll see the retreats there.
Yeah, and we'll put a link in the show notes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sure.
I want to acknowledge you.
Thanks, man.
Firstly as a coach and a mentor. I'm immensely grateful for the work that you do unselfishly to put this message out. Being an entrepreneur is not the easiest job in the world, but it's satisfying. So for that, I'd like to acknowledge you and thank you. I have one last question, sure, which I'm going to ask all my guests, and it's, if you erased everything that you've created, so the 4 books, all the hundreds of blog posts that you've done, the audio programs, the film, absolutely everything, and it was your last day and you had one piece of paper and you could write down one thing that would literally echo eternity, your message that would echo eternity forever, what would that one message be to help people believe in the inner greatness?
That's a good one, isn't it? Look, it always comes back to the thing that I discover about myself. What I find the most important thing that I've learned along the way would be ultimately what you'd want to share with other people. And that beyond all the noise, beyond all the stories and all the neediness and all the egoic, narcissistic tendencies that were ultimately, in the end, whether they brought pleasure, they also brought pain. There was something that I glimpsed and continue to glimpse along the way, is that within us all is this profound light, an immense level of love that is unconditional. It just burns like a fiery furnace, and it doesn't have need, it doesn't fluctuate, it doesn't get let down, doesn't have expectations. It just is it just is. It's simply that, and then it's always there. And to seek that within.
Thanks, mate.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Good to be here.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I'm so grateful for you coming on the show, Tom. It's been amazing. If you love the episode, the greatest thing I can ask is for you to share it with your tribe. And we really look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be great.
Peace.
Thanks, mate.
Pleasure, mate.
Good luck.